Welcome to Beyond 6 Seconds, the podcast that goes beyond the 6-second first impression to share the extraordinary stories and achievements of everyday people. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into the podcast. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different on the show. I don't have any guests to interview, it's just me here today. So instead, I'd like to pull back the curtain a little bit and tell you a bit about my podcast, why I started it, and what I've learned since I published the very first episodes at the beginning of this year. I can't believe it's almost been a year since I started this. So last month, in October, I had the opportunity to write a blog post as part of a guest blogger project run by my friend Esther Huffneck Curtis. Esther runs a blog as part of her company, which is called Parrot Content and Copy. And she organized this project to feature one blog post per day that was written by a guest blogger for every day in October. You'll get to learn more about Esther and the Guest Blogger Project in a few weeks, because I just interviewed her for an upcoming episode of this podcast. When I got the opportunity to be part of this project, I decided to write about Beyond 6 Seconds, of course, since that seems to be what's on my mind a lot of the time these days. I wanted to share this post with my podcast listeners too. So in this episode, I'm going to read the post to you. This year, I embarked on a new creative project. I started my own podcast. This was an unlikely project for me. First of all, I don't think of myself as someone who talks a lot, which I figured would be a prerequisite for becoming a podcast host. Additionally, I had no products to sell, no services to promote, and no specific topic in mind to discuss for hours on end. However, I did have a strong curiosity about people, how they got to where they are, how they overcome challenges, and why they choose the paths they choose. I also had creative friends with businesses, projects, and hobbies that were making a positive impact on the world. I decided that more people needed to hear these inspiring stories from my friends. Around this time, I read a study claiming that the decision to accept or reject a resume is based on a quick 6-second glance. This concept isn't limited to resumes, though. It's pretty common for people to make snap judgments based on their first impressions. So I thought, what if I could get beyond those first 6 seconds by creating a platform to help people tell their stories, showcase their talents, and celebrate the diverse ways they make the world a better place? And so, the Beyond 6 Seconds podcast was born. I launched the first episode on January 23rd, 2018. As of today, I've interviewed 34 incredible people on 34 episodes, with many more on the way. Actually, at the time of this recording, it's 35. Over time, I expected that I would get better at interviewing and recording, and I've definitely come a long way. However, I realized some other things that I didn't anticipate. I'm continually in awe of my guests' ingenuity and how they strive to improve the lives of others, from Lynn Erlob, whose business creates special spoons that enable people with disabilities to feed themselves, to Sarah Hollebeck, whose consulting firm leads open innovation prize competitions to solve complex problems in society. Opportunities for innovation exist everywhere. It's no secret that innovative people face challenges as they work towards their goals, but I've been really amazed at the magnitude of the obstacles that my guests are overcoming. From Crystal Murrin, who rebuilt her career after a traumatic brain injury, to Dave Sanderson, whose life changed after surviving a plane crash. My podcast has also opened up new opportunities and partnerships for me. As my guest list expanded beyond my friends list, I met people whom I never would have met otherwise, made strong connections with several of them, and even connected a few of my podcast guests with each other. I've been invited to attend conferences and be a guest on other podcasts. People continue to reach out to me, wanting to share their stories. I am surprised and delighted by how far Beyond 6 Seconds has come this year. My hope is that my podcast continues to uplift, inspire, and connect people. Whenever the world seems troubled and difficult, I hope that my listeners will find inspiration in these extraordinary stories from everyday people. I've also learned that if there's a creative project you've been meaning to start, but you just don't know how, you can begin by being curious and see where it leads you. Eventually, whether you're a talkative person or not, you can still find a way to use your voice to make your impact on the world. And that's my blog post. I hope you enjoyed it. You can also find the written post on www.parrotcontent.com, which is Esther's blog and her company. And I'll also have a direct link to the post in the show notes of this podcast. Thanks for spending time with me today. I'll be back next week with a new guest interview in another new episode of Beyond 6 Seconds. Have a great week. Thanks for listening to Beyond 6 Seconds. Please help us spread the word about this podcast. Share it with a friend, give us a shout out on your social media, or write a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. You can find all of our episodes on our website, www.beyond6seconds.com. Until next time.